Today I'm in Rotherham, a market town in South Yorkshire in the north of England. This town was known for its history, architecture and industrial heritage, dating all the way back to the Iron Age and the Roman settlement. Now, the town's history has nearly been forgotten due to what has been described as the biggest child protection scandal in UK history. In this town alone, an estimated 1,400 girls, commonly from care home backgrounds, were raped and tortured by what was later described by the media class as, quote, grooming gangs. The men were predominantly of Pakistani origin between the years 1997 and 2013. Sammy Woodhouse, survivor, campaigner, activist and whistleblower, has agreed to show me around the area and to share with you, the public, her story.
Well, it was just after my 14th birthday and I was just on a local shop with a friend, and a man in a silver sports car got out the car and he started talking to my friend as he knew her, and he asked us if we wanted to go for a spin in the car, which, you know, at that time I didn't recognise, you know, kind of any risks that were involved because, you know, my friend knew him, I also knew his brother a little bit as well. So we got into the car and went for a drive, and I had no idea, but that was the moment that changed my life forever, and I would go on to be mentally, sexually and physically abused for several years. I was made pregnant twice and I gave birth to my son just after my 16th birthday. But I was missing from home, you know, days, weeks and months at a time. And, you know, when this man was grooming me and abusing me, I didn't recognise it as abuse. I thought that this man was my boyfriend. But he was 24 years old. He was known to police and social care for being a really dangerous person that, of course, I shouldn't have been anywhere near. The truth is, a lot of people know about this. Social care, police, even the Home Office, but unfortunately they turned a blind eye. And what we also know is that, you know, some of those professionals that were meant to be protecting us were directly involved in this. But evidence shows that majority of the perpetrators were Pakistani Muslim men and majority of the victims were white, non-religious children. So a lot of people were afraid to talk about this in case they were called racist or Islamophobic.
Since as early as the 1970s, these rape and torture gangs have been active in approximately over 50 towns and cities across Britain and still continue to this day. The first time this story came to major prominence was after a Labour MP, Anne Cryer, raised concerns about the targeting of young girls by, quote, Asian men outside of school gates back in 2003. She was then accused of racism by many in her own party and vilified. Citizens in various towns and cities were reporting these rape crimes to the authorities and councils, but were largely met with deaf ears. The Telegraph reported that in Rotherham, a senior police officer told a distressed father of a victim that the town would erupt if the routine abuse of white children by Pakistani heritage men became public knowledge. One parent concerned about a missing daughter was told by the police that an older Asian boyfriend was, quote, a fashion accessory for girls in the town. The father of a 15-year-old rape victim was also told that the assault might mean she would, quote, learn her lesson. In 2014, the J Inquiry, which was set up to hold an independent inquiry into child sexual exploitation in Rotherham, found that children were doused in petrol and threatened with being set alight, threatened with guns, witnessed brutally violent rapes, and were threatened that they would be the next victim if they told anyone.
You know, there were thousands of children in my hometown. The Alexis J report shows that 1,400 of us were groomed, abused, raped, trafficked, tortured and unfortunately some even murdered. So some of us aren't even here to tell the tale. And this isn't something that's just happening in Rotherham. This is something that's happening you know, all over the country. So this area here is called Ferrum, and this is a hotspot, or at least it was, when all the grooming was happening. It started off gradual, so at first he'd start just by shouting at me, then it'd be a slap, then it'd be a punch, and then it got to the point where it would be every day. So for example, there was one occasion when I tried to leave, he dragged me into the car with my hair. He was speeding towards the top of the street and he drove through 2 parked cars and into a church. I was pregnant at the time and I got rushed into hospital. But there was another occasion where he said if he couldn't have me, no one else could. We was in the car and he started speeding towards the edge of a hilltop which overlooks all of Rotherham. And he said he was going to drive off it and kill us both. And right at the last minute, he slammed on the brakes. And, you know, still to this day, I don't know how the car didn't go over the edge. But he got out the car, he dragged me to the edge and said he was going to throw me off it. And I was that terrified, I actually wet myself. And at that moment, that's where I thought my life was going to end. But then he just put me in the back of the car and had, you know, sex with me, if you can actually call it that, as though nothing had happened whatsoever. And I remember just laying there and I was crying, but it was a silent cry. And the only way I can describe it is I felt like I was a dead body on a slab in a morgue. And I had that feeling there all the time, you know, this constant pain. And I knew it was from him. I knew I had to get away from him. I just couldn't figure out how. I think what, you know, people are now finding out is just the tip of the iceberg. And this is why it's so important that every single council and police force get an independent investigation, because we have to know the truth of what's happened in every town and city. And I think if we did just one overall national inquiry, it would take decades to do. I think information and, you know, all the evidence would be lost in that. If they did an independent one into each council, we would get the truth within probably a year. And then we can, you know, find out exactly what's been going on and tackle this. But they still, as it stands today, have enough evidence to know what's been going on and what should be done. There's all these recommendations. I've been telling them for 12 years. I've been working with politicians, you know, for all those years, telling them of things they should be doing. It's basic common sense and they're still not doing it.
So with relation to Keir Starmer and him being Prime Minister now, but he was originally the Director of Public Prosecutions, in your view, how do you view Keir Starmer, and did he adequately handle all of these prosecutions?
I think Keir Starmer's an absolute disgrace, and I'm baffled at why he's still Prime Minister. Now, let's be very clear, these you know, investigations opened because we forced them to be opened. I mean, if you look at me, I opened in 2013 the criminal investigation into Rotherham, which is known as the biggest criminal investigation in British history. Keir Starmer didn't do that. You know, it was open because I named politicians, I named police officers, I named rapists, and they were shamed into it. And before I went public and exposed Rotherham, I tried to deal with this, you know, in-house. They weren't interested. And what he's done, just like he did when, you know, the Southport massacre happened, anybody that has concerns about what's happening to children in our country, he brands them as far right or jumping on a far right bandwagon. You know, let's be very clear about what's happening to children in our country. And it's not something of the past, it's something that's happening today. Children are groomed, abused, raped, tortured, trafficked, murdered, blamed, criminalised and impregnated. And if we've got a problem with that, we're far right.
The truth is, the public does not know the full extent of the victims and perpetrators because of institutional and political negligence. The media class in Britain only reported these horrific crimes as drips and drabs with very little detail. It was only with the help of whistleblowers and activists did this story really be pushed into public discourse. The main crux to why all of this has happened is deep-rooted in Britain's political system. The government want to minimise unrest between communities because the gangs are predominantly of Pakistani origin that targeted predominantly white working-class children. This has been Lewis Brackpool reporting in Rotherham for Ongehoord.